There we go. It's now recording. So what we have today, that's a bit of a glare off. Is that okay? Yeah. Let's glare off the screen. So back here, very briefly, so we've got our 7 structures which the brain selects. The theory being we looked at these two, these being the most common kind of resting states. Now we're getting to the more active. That is, places where you go when you're trying to make decisions, when you're pushing things around. And then next week we'll look at strategic and the aesthetic, and then finally the transcendent. Let me just check something here. This is all good. Yeah. Sure, it's noisy out there. I think the senior people are entertaining overseas folks, but I'm not absolutely certain. I don't get told what's going on. Just find a different classroom. Okay, so that's the 7. So on then to equitability. This is an extraordinarily powerful moral emotion. We're just moving into far more complex frameworks than we have. So when we looked at the communal, familial, very simple. It's simply a question of identity, who you are, how you belong to the group, and then what the responsibilities of members are to each other. The hierarchical had that strong sense of you can order anything, but it always has to be ordered, and that's the key point. Well, here we're getting into the whole question of fairness. And if you've ever dealt with children, you realize fairness is an extremely important moral perception. But it turns out that it takes us a lot further than just a simple sense of playground fairness. You can do an amazing amount of very sophisticated ethical, moral analysis using that fundamental framework once it's turned into this kind of geometry. So we'll look at that. The basic fundamental psychology of what we're looking at is, if we think again of circles, or it doesn't have to be circles, could be spheres, could be kind of, the precise nature is not that essential. What is important here is our sense of radial distribution. That is, we're distributed around the outside of the circle. That is, we're participants, equal participants. And so that a circle of equal distribution is that sense. That's what kids are looking for on the playground, is what all of us are looking for in life in one way or another. That sense of we're all going to be treated the same, more or less, as long as we are the same. Or anyway, it gets complicated because it's not really easy necessarily to determine who belongs to the circle. So it can be individuals, groups, or even whole classes can be radially distributed. One of the problems in North American society is corporations. Do corporations get to be part of the circle of distribution or not? And the general rule is, in North America, a corporation is a person under the law. That is, as the law is being equally distributed, a person and a corporation have the same place. That is, they're treated kind of conceptually the same way. But no, we're talking about under the law. That is, it's a single good to be divided equally. This is not how different goods relate to each other. That is, we can't trade off housing versus participation in the military. Those are two completely different categories of things to be distributed. So we look at them differently in terms of how people might be distributed around the circle. People have different needs, they have different roles, they are different. So you take a single good. What is that single thing? Candy in the playground is perfect. Is it going to be distributed fairly? That's what we want. Is it a single, simple distribution system? Yeah, there.
Because I don't memorize it all.
Okay. Okay. Well, the slides are all up on the course website too, and the video will be up sometime. Whenever I can do. I don't know if anybody has looked at that. I think some of you have taken a peek at that. Actually, I have one person out there, not from this class, who's carefully working through them all. Well, oh, okay. Would like copies of the slides, since he's not a participant in the class. Says they don't come through clearly enough on the video. So, anyway. would like him to then take on the task of editing the video to put that in there. I would have, actually he might do it too. So the core issue here psychologically is the intuition of distance from the center of distribution and the relation to others in the circle. That is, we're looking for an intuitive sense of that. Are we all equally far away from the source? Equally close, equally far. That is, do we have equal access to it? And how are we spaced in relationship to each other? Are people kind of clumped together, or is it a radial spacing? Everybody's in an equivalent place. Because what we really want is to be completely equivalently treated. Same space as everyone else, same distance, so that there is a sense of complete fairness. Okay? Whatever happens, we know we're not being treated any differently because of where we're standing, how we're positioned in relationship to what's going on. Ideally, it leads to a sense of movement up. That is, we're looking for healthful distributions. That's our ideal. I mean, if we have to have we can have negative things, punishments being distributed this way too, but we're not fond of that. That doesn't make us feel that good to know that punishments are being distributed fairly. But it makes us really feel good to know that good things are being distributed fairly. So that's what we're looking for, that's what we want. Possibly it's negatively skewed. One of the problems in our brains is we're always more afraid of losing than excited about gaining. That is, you'll fight much harder if your marks are going down than to make them go up. Okay? It's just the way our brains work at things. If it's losing things, give us anxiety, energize us, make us take action. Gaining things is nice, we enjoy it, we will move toward it, but not with the same energy. We don't pursue positives the same way. Which leads to some very interesting biases. If you're interested, every casino counts on this. Every investment firm demands this. That is, they work with your biases, and that's part of how they make money. You do not behave as a rational actor. You behave as a negatively skewed actor, and so then the question becomes, how do you, in a casino, how do you get your losses back? You never went there expecting to gain anything, but you're really unhappy by how much you've lost, and so you keep gambling to stop losing. Of course, the only way to lose is to continue to gamble. This is beautiful, beautiful stuff when you get into the psychology of that. It's also possible, nobody knows, or maybe somebody does know, but I haven't seen the research, that when you find that sense of fairness, that there's also dopamine release in the brain, and that's a pleasure chemical. Why would that be? The potential is that it's a developmental association. If you've been receiving rewards, fair rewards as a child, that actually generates a pretty powerful dopamine release, and you feel good. Well, it's quite possible that that continues through all of life, and you can even build a very strong sense of fairness as a good thing. But if it's a dopamine release, that's typically a learned pattern. It's not inherent. Dopamine is a natural brain chemical. Where and how it's released is learned. So that's the psychology of it. It's pretty powerful stuff. You start treating certain kinds of people unfairly, and it's very easy to see that you're provoking a strong emotional reaction. That's a sense of what's going on, particularly around this one. For some people, this is how you live life. And that raises interesting questions about how they feel about some of the other moral emotional patterns and whether or not they can function effectively. What I have come to wonder is if children are traumatized in their family of origin, that means they're typically going to have difficulty doing good moral evaluations around the communal identity issues. They may have strong problems with authority figures, and thus have real problems with ranking systems. But that means that they're probably trying to work in this area. This is the next energy level up in terms of the brain. It's something that families typically are not that worried about. You know, families are ordered, they're about generosity and identity. Fairness, How do you get fairness between brothers and sisters? If you ever figure that out, let me know, and I can write a book on it, and it'll sell big time, because it doesn't work.
Yeah.
My brothers. Anyway, I was the eldest. They got away with everything, right? Anyway, and they had the reverse. I was the oldest. I was the meanest. I was bossy all the time. You know, how do you get fairness out of that when it's that intrinsic? You can't. So, but that means that if people aren't functioning in that way in their families of origin, they're actually not learning bad things about it either. It becomes a positive way for the brain to easily grab a hold of the world and make sense of it. Which takes us on to, okay. So, the basic idea is a circle of distribution, units standing equidistant in relation to point of distribution. We'll talk about that. What's really important is any good, any single specific good could be distributed this way. So restaurant service, you know, everybody gets treated fairly. Every customer should be treated the same as every other customer, right? You walk in, it's just, that's fair, right? What do we mean? Well, it's like we're sitting in a circle and everybody gets served at the same time in relation. The kitchen doesn't say, oh wait, we're not going to serve that group. You know, actually they do. But they're not supposed to. You know, it's not supposed to be unfair like that. They're supposed to, orders come in, orders go out. We treat them in, you know, take turns, turn taking. Very powerful form of this sense of equality. But what I love is, if you think of it in abstract terms, you can talk about fairness, justice, equality, human rights. These are all things which can be distributed in exactly the same way with this sense of fairness. I mean, what is a human right if it isn't distributed equally? The answer is it's not a human right. That is, the fair distribution is built into it. If it's a human right, then every human should get it equally. If they don't, then there's something wrong with what's going on. If they can't, then it's not a human right. If they can and it's not, then we've got a problem that needs to be addressed. So, but you can't get any more abstract in thinking than a human right. What is a human right? I mean, who decides? Real problem. We looked at that a little bit with Kantian deontology. One of the problems is, what are the rights that are taken as rights?
National union?
Sorry?
National union?
National union? No, can be. Thinking more basically, right to fair treatment under the law, that's a very standard human right. Right to bread, not a standard human right.
It doesn't more depend on the people and the society that can live.
Yeah, what's fair in one society, oh yeah, now we're getting to all sorts of problems. What is fair? Who determines? What is, yeah, and now we're moving into the negatives because, oh, there are lots of negatives associated. We'll get to that. But the powerful point about this one, though, this works best in larger groups. So we're looking 150 and beyond, into the millions. That is, if you're going to get a large group of people to work together, a sense of fairness is a very powerful way of doing so. A small group, a team, well, they'll do crazy things for a sense of identity. But a very large group, like a nation, will not do stuff too easily just on the basis of a sense of identity. You can, but it's hard. But they do things very quickly on the basis of turn-taking. That is, we're going to take turns, who's going to stand in line. Canadian healthcare is a perfect example of that. It's not the greatest healthcare in the world. It's actually very good, but it's not the greatest. But what's critical, if you want to understand it, is it's about turn-taking. Everybody lines up, everybody stands there, everybody takes their turn, and they get their service, their medical care when their turn comes up. Doesn't matter how wealthy they are, doesn't matter how poor they are, you simply stand in line and get this extraordinary resource delivered to you by taking turns. That is this sense of fairness, of equal distribution. So we get very upset when hockey players from the Vancouver Canucks hire their own doctors and their own clinics and get medical treatment, which they can do because they have lots of money. We're not happy when millionaires in Canada fly down to the United States for medical treatment because they can get it 6 months quicker there than they can in Canada. They're violating it. But they can't do it easily. The system isn't set up for it. You don't just go to your doctor and say, I'd like to move to the head of the line. Why do I know a doctor? And if you do that to your doctor and he's the right kind of doctor, he won't get you moved to the head of the line. It's not perfect. Okay? There are better and worse ways of making it function. But as a large group, people have faith in that group and its ability to function and be good for them if there's this deep sense of fairness built into it. That is, everybody is positioned equally. So, very powerful, positive feelings that go into this. Our sense of justice, most powerfully. And you cannot function in a large-scale society very well without a good sense of justice. And that is a problem for many nations. Canada works really hard at making sure it has a clear sense of justice, of fairness. Everybody gets equal access to the law works for people. It doesn't work perfectly because law and legal systems are extremely expensive. But the theory is you don't get picked on because you're poor. You may have reduced access because you're poor, but if you're poor, why would anybody sue you? Why would the police do not arbitrarily choose people off the street and say, we're just going to arrest you. Go get your lawyer. That's not fair. Okay? You've got to have a reason for it. You've got to have, cause to arrest somebody. That's part of the justice system. And then the courts will treat you neutrally. They don't care. They're not looking for why. But there are many so-called justice systems that are not concerned particularly about treating people fairly. They're about raising money for the police. That's one of the real frustrations of low-tax environments. Canada is a moderate to high-tax environment. Why? Because it's hard to get justice if the police don't get paid well. That means they're in it for bribes. They're not going to treat you fairly because their question is, how do I live reasonably well? And so taxes, a high-tax environment, goes to paying. In my area where I live, the police are the single most expensive component of my city taxes. It's paying for police. After that comes everything else. That's good. It means I don't have to worry about being pulled over by the cops who say, you were driving a little poorly there. I don't know, I'm going to have to write you up, and I give them a 20, and then they say, just drive better next time. Okay? But that's really typical in a lot of environments if the police are not paid well. I'm told there is the odd police officer in my area who does behave that way, but if found, they will be fired immediately. This is completely unacceptable within a good quality justice system. Strong sense of inclusion, participation. That is one of the wonderful things about democracies, is they give everybody a sense of participation. Because turn-taking means everybody belongs. And active equality with others, we all love that. Even if we're not making use of that opportunity, we like to know that there is that possibility. All we have to do is join the line and we can get whatever's going with it. And we like that for anything that we can think of that we believe to be important to human life. Problem case here in Vancouver is, should we all have equal access to housing? Because we don't. Those who can pay more can get housing. Those who can't pay more cannot. Is that fair? No. Yes.
Very somehow did.
Yeah, this is a tricky one. And that's what, and it's a real problem. I mean, should everybody be allowed to live in Vancouver who wants to live in Vancouver?
Yes. No. Yes.
Yes, no. Put it this way, I'm here, the answer is no.
No.
I've got a place, so I don't want to see more people. It just causes problems. Yeah, more traffic, more accidents, more clutter, more pollution, more demand. No, nobody else should have the right. I think the high prices are really good to keep people out of this zone.
It's not fair.
Not fair?
I think it's fair.
Because everyone can decide in freely, and if they want to live here, they should live here.
But that fairness
Depends on
doesn't mean that it's
some-
optional.
No.
Actually, it's a kind of
No.
fair, but not equal.
Ah,
Fair is a